In the year 2147, humanity had reached the zenith of its technological prowess. The stars were no longer out of reach, and the vast expanse of the cosmos had become a new frontier for exploration. The United Earth Space Agency, UESA, had launched numerous missions to distant star systems, but none were as promising as the expedition to Kepler 452b, a planet located approximately 1,400 light-years from Earth. Dubbed Elysium by the crew of the starship Ether, the planet was believed to be a potential second home for humanity. The Ether was a state-of-the-art vessel, equipped with the latest in propulsion technology, life support systems, and scientific instruments. Its crew of 12 was composed of the best and brightest minds from across the globe. Among them were Commander Elena Vasquez, a seasoned astronaut with over a decade of experience in deep space missions, Dr. Marcus Lee, a renowned astrobiologist, and Lieutenant Sarah Collins, a skilled engineer and pilot. After a journey lasting nearly 5 years, the Ether finally entered the Kepler 452 system. As the ship approached Elysium, the crew was awestruck by the planet's beauty. It was a world of lush forests, vast oceans, and towering mountains. The atmosphere was rich in oxygen, and the temperature was within the habitable range for humans. It seemed like paradise. But as the Ether descended through the planet's atmosphere, the crew began to notice something strange. The forests were eerily silent, devoid of the usual sounds of wildlife. The oceans were calm, almost too calm, with no signs of waves or currents. And the mountains seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic glow. The Ether touched down on a wide, grassy plain near the edge of one of the planet's vast forests. The crew donned their environmental suits and stepped out onto the surface of Elysium. The air was crisp and clean, and the gravity was slightly lower than Earth's, making movement easy and almost buoyant. Commander Vasquez led the team as they began their initial survey of the area. Dr. Lee took samples of the soil, water, and plant life, while Lieutenant Collins set up a series of sensors to monitor the environment. The rest of the crew spread out, each tasked with a specific objective. As they worked, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The silence was oppressive, and the lack of any visible animal life was unsettling. Even the plants seemed to be aware of their presence, their leaves rustling softly in the absence of any wind. It was during the second day of their exploration that the crew first heard the whispers. At first, they were faint, almost imperceptible, like the distant murmur of a crowd. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing in the minds of the crew members. The whispers were not in any language they could understand, but they carried an undeniable sense of urgency, of warning. The crew tried to ignore them, attributing the phenomenon to stress or some unknown environmental factor. But the whispers persisted, growing more insistent with each passing hour. Dr. Lee was the first to succumb to the whispers. He began to hear them constantly, even when he was alone in his quarters. They spoke to him, urging him to go deeper into the forest, to find the source of the pulsing light in the mountains. He became increasingly agitated, his behavior erratic and unpredictable. Despite the growing unease among the crew, Commander Vasquez decided to press on with the mission. They had come too far to turn back now, and the potential rewards were too great to ignore. She ordered the team to prepare for an expedition into the forest, towards the mountains. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches twisting and writhing as if alive. The ground beneath their feet became soft and spongy, and the air grew thick with a strange, metallic scent. After several hours of trekking through the dense undergrowth, the crew reached the base of the mountains. The pulsing light was stronger here, emanating from a large, dark opening in the side of the mountain. It was a cave, its entrance partially obscured by a curtain of vines. The crew hesitated at the entrance to the cave. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from within the cave itself. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, and the pulsing light was almost blinding. Commander Vasquez ordered the team to proceed with caution. They activated their helmet lights and stepped into the cave. The walls were smooth and polished, as if carved by some ancient, intelligent force. The floor sloped downward, leading them deeper into the mountain. As they descended, the whispers began to take on a more coherent form. They spoke of an ancient entity, a being that had slumbered beneath the surface of Elysium for eons. It was a being of immense power, capable of bending reality to its will. The whispers warned of the consequences of awakening it, of the destruction it would bring. But the whispers also spoke of the rewards, of the knowledge and power that could be gained by communing with the entity. They promised answers to the mysteries of the universe, the secrets of life and death, the nature of existence itself. The crew reached the heart of the cave, a vast chamber filled with the pulsing light. At the center of the chamber was a massive, crystalline structure, its surface covered in intricate, glowing patterns. The whispers were at their loudest here, a deafening roar that filled the minds of the crew. Dr. Lee, driven by the whispers, approached the structure. He reached out to touch it, his hand trembling. As his fingers made contact with the crystal, the whispers ceased, and the chamber was filled with a profound silence. Then, the crystal began to glow brighter, the patterns on its surface shifting and changing. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and the air grew thick with a palpable energy. The crew realized, too late, that they had awakened the entity. The crystalline structure shattered, and from within emerged the entity. It was a being of pure energy, its form shifting and changing, impossible to comprehend. It radiated an aura of power and malevolence, its presence overwhelming. The entity spoke, its voice resonating in the minds of the crew. It spoke of its long slumber, of the countless civilizations it had consumed, of the worlds it had destroyed. It spoke of its hunger, its insatiable desire for knowledge and power. The crew tried to flee, but the entity was too fast. It reached out with tendrils of energy, wrapping them around the crew members, draining them of their life force, their memories, their very essence. One by one, they fell, their bodies collapsing to the ground, lifeless. Commander Vasquez was the last to fall. As the entity's tendrils wrapped around her, she felt a surge of energy, a final burst of strength. She activated the emergency beacon on her suit, sending a distress signal to the ether. Then, with the last of her strength, she reached for the detonator on her belt. The explosion rocked the chamber, the force of the blast shattering the remaining crystals and collapsing the cave. The entity let out a deafening roar, its form flickering and fading as the chamber collapsed around it. The ether received the distress signal and immediately launched a rescue mission. They found the cave collapsed, the entrance buried under tons of rock. Using their advanced equipment, they managed to clear the debris and reach the chamber. What they found was a scene of devastation. The chamber was in ruins, the crystalline structure shattered, and the bodies of the crew scattered across the floor. But there was no sign of the entity. The rescue team recovered the bodies and returned to the ether. They conducted a thorough analysis of the chamber, but found no trace of the entity. It was as if it had never existed. The ether returned to Earth, its mission a failure. The crew was mourned as heroes, their sacrifice remembered as a warning to future explorers. The UESA classified Elysium as a forbidden planet, its secrets buried beneath the rubble of the collapsed cave. But the whispers did not stop. They followed the ether back to Earth, carried in the minds of the rescue team. They spread like a virus, infecting those who came into contact with the survivors. The whispers spoke of the entity, of its return, of the destruction it would bring. And as the whispers grew louder, the world began to change. The skies darkened, the oceans churned, and the ground trembled. The entity was awakening, its power growing with each passing day. And humanity, once the masters of their own destiny, were now at the mercy of an ancient, malevolent force, awakened by their own curiosity and greed. In the end, the whispers were not a warning, but a call. A call to awaken the entity, to bring about the end of all things. And as the world descended into chaos, the whispers grew louder, a symphony of despair and destruction. The entity had returned, and with it, the end of humanity. The whispers had won.